We've all heard a lot in the news and the media recently from adults from all walks of life, all jobs, all perspectives, but we often don't get to hear directly from the students regarding their experience, their hopes, their concerns about going back to school, and honestly, just their amazing ideas about how to make the school year better for students, teachers, schools, and their communities. So tonight, we are really looking forward to hearing from each of you. And before we begin, we'd like to play a video compilation that was created to highlight some of the students' thoughts about returning to school this fall.
One of my main concerns as a student who will be in person next year is the current prevalence of hate speech and hate crimes. I just can't help but wonder the sort of impact that will have on student feelings of belonging and really just our physical safety.
My biggest concern for returning back to school is for students who have had limited to no social interaction for the past year, how they're going to adjust to attending school every day and being forced to see people and the added stress that might come with that.
I have students who enter ninth grade and they completely took classes online using Zoom. So they missed out for their freshman experience. So they lost the ability to socially engage and interact on campus.
All of the kids who spent the entire last year online are just gonna have like a ton of difficulty readjusting and socializing again.
How will we be like as a vibe? Because like when we're online, we haven't really talked to one another.
During this period of COVID-19, there has been a much greater emphasis by educational institutions on student mental health. And so returning back to school, it makes me wonder whether these positive changes will remain or we will revert back to normal.
Like what's going to be implemented new or going to be taken out maybe. And when it goes to teachers, will the teaching be different because maybe they learned something from online?
The transition from virtual to face-to-face learning is going to affect our academic workload and the stress that comes with that workload.
Last year we had a hybrid schedule because of COVID, which gave us a lot more time to balance sports, school, and other extracurricular activities. So I think it's just going to be stressful and overwhelming when we have to go back to our normal schedule with our longer school days and sports on top of that.
Now that most social distancing restrictions have been lifted, another concern that I have is in case there is another rise in COVID cases, how will the schools handle it and how will they react to it?
The Delta variant has really rampaged the US so far, and even if you are vaccinated, you can still get it, which is really scary for me. So it's definitely my concerns how they're going to keep everyone safe, healthy, and not spread it throughout the schools and get us sick.
I have a lot of hope for next year, and I think it's going to be great as a senior, but it still comes with its doubts, especially coming out of COVID.
Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the video. I think it really highlights some of the thoughts that are going on for our students. And so we like to just get started, and tonight's going to be very relaxed, conversational, and I'm going to talk as little as possible and allow the students to really put out their ideas. So my first question is, what are you most excited about with your return to school? Drew, you want to get us started?
Sure. One of the things that I'm most excited about with returning to school is getting to be around people and getting to do work with people. I really love being in groups of people and in classrooms with people and in hallways with people. And having the energy of people around me and people that are ready to work and ready to learn helps me focus and it helps me learn. And I also have a lot more fun in school when I'm around teachers and students and doing sports and things like that. So I'm really excited to be around people.
I agree with everything Drew said. I actually started school on Monday this week, and it's our first time being full capacity in person for, I think, we weren't in full capacity at all last year. So it's been a while since we've been in the classroom with like a full group of people. And I think it's a lot easier to learn and to enjoy learning when you're surrounded by people. And I know it was also hard for the teachers last year to be teaching virtually to students on the screen. So I think teachers are doing a lot better. I think students are doing a lot better. And I think there's just an overall more positive environment at school than there was before, because I think we appreciate being around each other and there's a lot of like school spirit and excitement to be back. So I've had a great first week at school and I'm just really happy to be back with everyone.
Yeah. Deep, you can go first. It's okay. You can go first.
Thank you. Now, Lena, talking about like the excitement, I feel like it's a very unique environment right now because people have been so socially starved that they're like going out, like talking to each other and like meeting new people in a way that they never were before. And like, I feel like we're like semi desperate. We're like, come talk to me. Like, it's been a while. And so that's really, really incredible. And also, one of the things I will say for me personally, I didn't think I realized how difficult it was for me personally to learn online. And so being able to like have my teachers there, being able to ask questions and have that like physical learning environment is just so important. I feel like I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and to build off of what Lena said, I started school on Monday as well. And so it's been kind of weird to like see all my friends after like a year and a half. And what I kind of say is that it has all the awkwardness of virtual learning combined with all the socialization of real school. And so it's just kind of been surreal for me because I haven't seen these people since 8th grade. And so I walk up to them like, hey, and they're like, oh my gosh, hi, like I didn't even recognize you. It's been so long. And so for me, it's just kind of that socialization and seeing my friends again because, we kind of miss like our whole middle school graduation. It's kind of weird because I used to be a middle schooler, but now I'm a high schooler now. And so it's just all that socialization and realizing that, people might be quiet the first day and everyone was quiet on Monday, but you can see now that it's Wednesday, everyone just wants to have a friend and kind of return to the normal learning that we had before this entire pandemic. And so it's just really all about the socialization, at least for me, and I know for a lot of my other friends, and just seeing their friends again and kind of getting back into the rhythm.
Thank you all so much. Anyone else before we, it sounds like everyone's really focused on that socialization, that connection that you've missed. They're excited to kind of get back in there. And I think JJ, that was such an interesting point. As adults, we don't think about, for us, a year is a year. I pretty much look the same as I did last year. For middle schoolers to high school, it can be a big difference. So I think that's really interesting point. And in the video, one of the students mentioned about time management, right? We went from kind of this hybrid schedule or being at home, having a lot more time to manage all these things, and that being a concern. What are some other concerns that you all are thinking about as you head back to school?
One for me, I would say the sports. Me, like personally as an athlete, I really want to like be more on the court and active, but I don't want to catch COVID or anything. But I don't want that fear get in the way of me wanting to like actually have my name known rather than just over the screen.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that statement. I think I do want to become more involved in my school and do more activities, but again, I want to try to be as safe as possible, and especially when we're going into a school that's full capacity, I just don't really know how I'm going to be able to do that, so that's one concern of mine.
My concern as a senior, I think, is a lot toward the younger students in our school. I think that a lot of seniors like myself feel that responsibility. We were only underclassmen when we went and school shut down and we didn't come back, and now we're seniors. But for all the freshmen coming from 7th grade, for the 10th graders coming from 8th grade, they don't know their way around. It's a new environment. And then transfer students, they're really going unnoticed. We don't even realize they're there, people who move states, countries even. So I'm worried about how they're adjusting and how we can help them to adjust to this new environment.
I agree with Ashi. I think what I'm concerned about too in my school particularly would be what we're kind of having this social isolation epidemic these days. And I've seen a lot of people, during lunch, they sit alone or just, being totally reserved in general, but people don't do anything about it. So we're facing this huge social isolation epidemic, but no one's really talking about it in school because also, there's so many social groups in school, like, there's so many cliques and friend groups, and it's so hard for people to merge in, especially the incoming freshmen. They look at us like we're giants, honestly. But I think also what plays in part of that is definitely social media. Teenagers are influenced by social media. And also, I mean, you see, like, for example, on Instagram, your friends vacationing. It's great to see, but people who are lonely, like people who actually don't have, that many people to talk to, they start feeling lonely and they start feeling inferior and a lack of self-esteem. So I definitely think social isolation, feeling inferior, and that's definitely what my concerns are going back into school, is seeing more people vulnerable like that.
May that have an interesting. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
I thought Maytha made an interesting point, because I think I agree with her in that a year did go by and a lot of people grew a lot as people and discovered new parts of themselves as part of their identities, or who they are, who they want to be. And that's a very different experience, going through that in isolation versus going through that in a very social environment. Like, I feel like people have become really comfortable with who they are, and then now we're transitioning back into an environment where we were someone that we are not anymore. So I think it's just very interesting. Like, when I went back to school, I noticed a lot of people looked very different, acted very different, dressed very differently. So I think that everyone changed a lot over the pandemic time. And it's just interesting to see, like, I guess it's a little bit of a concern, but also, like, it's just unknown to see how people are going to adjust going back to an environment that I think we changed a lot since we were last in that environment, if that makes sense. And now we're going back there. So I don't know if people will feel less comfortable being who they are or who they became during the pandemic, and if they'll kind of go back to who they were before, or I don't know how that's going to work. But that's just an interesting point that I thought of after what made this event.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful thought. It's kind of not only the physical changes, but those mental, social, emotional changes that students go through over a summer, right? Kids go to camp and come back and things are different. So I think, it's also interesting is what you all are most excited about. This socialization is also part of what you're most concerned about, right? So it's this, how do we kind of balance those two? And a term that's often thrown out, especially by adults, is kind of mental health, mental wellness, right? I'm a therapist, I say it all the time. But I'd love to hear from you all, what does that term kind of mean to you when you hear it? And does it kind of make you think of what you'd want schools or staff, administration, teachers to do to kind of support that in different ways?
This is interesting because I was making a pamphlet today on this. And so honestly, so I was like thinking, and there were like 3 bullet points that I came up that, like, for me personally, and one was obviously safety. Students can go and they feel like they fit in and they're not going to be targeted for who they are. The second thing I would say is, which is what we've been lacking the past 2 years, I would say, is connection. And so those, like, being able to, like, have opportunities to, like, talk to each other during lunch, having games and stuff, like, that's so important. And the third that I think isn't really talked about a lot is, I think, empowerment. I feel like we live in a very, very competitive environment these days, especially for students students are getting, like, more and more involved in different things every single day. They're getting, like, smarter. Like, I don't know how to better word for that, but, like, they are getting smarter every day. They're working harder each day. And I feel like it's so easy to get lost in comparison and to, like, have your self-esteem, like, take a few hits. And so I think we need to, like, remind our students of, like, how much they are capable of succeeding. And a lot of the times, if you look in our classes, you'll see different demographics in each class that I think can follow a lot of, like, historical patterns. And, like, I think we really want to make sure that students feel like they can succeed, and that there's no, like, survival of the fittest. Like, that does not belong in a school.
Yeah, I think Duthie brought up an interesting point along with what I was going to say. For me personally, mental health, mental wellness means being content with yourself or being at peace with yourself, not comparing yourself to others, because I know that that's a huge thing, especially in my school, is comparing yourself, because we have so many AP classes and it can be stressful. And just really, I mean, we all have bad days. I mean, I definitely have my mood swings being in Ohio with the weather that is unpredictable. So I have my mood swings. But mental health is, my dad used to tell me, people who are like mentally like strong, they have thick skin. So I think mental health is developing that thick skin over time, and just, you know, trying to be in the present. I mean, anxiety is, you're always thinking about the future, and depression is something else, but always being able to fight what's going to come up. So I think that, and it's especially hard for students, especially during this era with social media and lots of AP classes, so you're juggling between different things. But I think that's what mental health means to me, is definitely being happy with yourself, accepting yourself for who you are, and not comparing others, because that ultimately doesn't do anything for you. So yeah, I agree with you, Dee.
Yeah, I love that. It's also kind of that, not only kind of being content, also knowing when to ask for help, which is what you guys are so wonderful at, and advocating in that empowerment to other students. And Joelle, I see you kind of nodding along. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just agreeing with everyone else, how they're saying that, like, it's important to be in a position where your, like, mental health is, like, your mental well-being is in, like, a strong position before you can go and help others, because it's important for us to be strong and to have, like, good, like, mental well-being in order to help others.
I agree. And for you all as students, it's really hard for us to expect you to sit in a classroom and learn if you're not feeling great, right? That's kind of the number one, right? We need to have all those needs met, whether it's physical, emotional, nutritional, to then be able to sit and focus in class and actually learn and make friends and enjoy yourself. Are there things specifically or ideas that are going on in your school that you find have been really helpful for schools to do to support that, to support either that connection or that empowerment or that mental health in general, either things that your school is doing or things you would love for schools to be doing?
I think one thing that I would love for my school to do, that I feel like clubs like our Say Promise Club kind of fill in for, is shooting to find help and connection for those students that kind of fly under the radar but aren't at the point where the school is constantly on their backs. Because I feel like the students that are at the top always are around teachers and like other students working on things, so they have connections and eyes on them. And then the students on the other end always have, administration on their back, so they have eyes on them too. And then there's just the students that kind of fly through high school, under the radar. And I feel like things like Start with Hello, that's really what we try to do. But we're like 2 years behind on that now, thanks to quarantine. So I feel like that's another thing we have to focus on, because we have like three grades that we haven't been able to reach out to yet. But I think schools also should be making an effort to focus on things like that.
I totally agree with what Drew said. And I think something that I love that my school and the staff and teachers at our schools are doing is just acknowledging that, we've struggled too during the pandemic. I think before this, it was a lot of like extremes, like if you're visibly upset, if the teacher knows that you're depressed or anxious or have OCD or ADHD, that's when they'll address it. But for teachers to acknowledge that there's sometimes like less extreme versions of these emotions, and maybe you're not necessarily suffering from a mental disorder or illness, but you still have those feelings of anxiety or depression or frustration. And I think a lot of teachers are now acknowledging that it is hard to focus, it is hard to transition back into school. It's hard to stay up late and wake up early and get all our work done and play sports. And I just think that acknowledgement helps us feel heard and understood.
To add on what Ashi said, I totally agree. And I think that, everyone should realize that everyone has their own definition of mental health and mental wellness. And although it's like very, broad and, maybe complicated, but like everyone should definitely be patient. And also, teachers, which, a lot of my teachers have been doing this, definitely give students agendas and syllabus, because when we were hybrid and all online, we were really like almost like just like feeling our way through. We need that organization, that structure, and also we need that like patience, taking baby steps with us. So
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Do you want to go, JJ? Was that JJ?
Yeah, I can go ahead first and then you can go after me. But just one thing that I wanted to say was that at my school, actually, what we're doing is last year when we were in our kind of hybrid learning, we actually only had lunch in our classroom. So you were kind of forced to eat lunch with these people, and you couldn't really turn around or anything with these people that you'd only seen online, and then you had just started seeing them in person. So it was kind of awkward because you didn't really know them at all because they were kind of all upperclassmen. And so one thing that our school is doing this year, we're actually able to have lunch periods and still kind of maintain a safe number of kids in our cafeteria. And so we're actually having kids come into the cafeteria, and also our cafeteria is not as big as we like it to, so we actually can also eat in the commons. And so what that's able to do is kind of mix like classes of all grades, and you might even have some friends in there. And so that's been really good for us because we're able to have friends in there, and we're also able to kind of have people that we know, so that way we can kind of have still that socialization factor at lunch. And I think that was really good, and I think that was a really good program to kind of input, starting out this new school year with not everyone having been there last year.
Yeah, I totally I agree with JJ. What I would like to see implemented in schools would probably be focus groups. I know that Sandy Hook promised there's this cool thing called a circle up where everyone has their turn to speak on certain issues. So I would like focus groups in school. And like Drew mentioned, for kids under the radar, that would really help because most kids who are under the radar, they feel like they aren't being heard or they aren't valued enough. So that would really work for focus groups terms. Also, I think sometimes schools forget that each student has so many different talents, like it's not only like, I know some schools they overemphasize on sports, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that there's so many other talents out there, whether it's, carpentry or whatever there is. Maybe like that would help students feel more valued and not be like, oh, I'm not good at sports, so I'm just good for nothing. So I think that promotion of different talents, kind of giving that like lift that, hey, each person is really good at something, let's bring it together. And then checking in routinely with students who are flying under the radar would be great, because I know everyone has a story to tell. And I know this because I, as an immigrant, as an Indian person, I have felt left out. So I have had my moments of, I feel like I need to be heard, but I haven't. So I definitely think that would help for kids who are feeling down or feeling like they need to be heard.
I love that. I think you guys are all really have some excellent ideas of things either schools can do or things that you have been doing to really focus on bringing everyone in to create that inclusivity, that school climate, right? As researchers, as school administrations, we talk about school climate a lot and having that positive school climate. And what you're all talking about is how to create it, and hearing from you some awesome ideas. When you're talking about that circle up, I love the idea of a check-in kind of in the homeroom to take that moment. You are correct. I mean, the research supports it. Those kids that are not acting out, not being aggressive, they often do get pushed under the radar and not seen. I have just a quick question for any of you. Any ideas? Can you explain to us how you run some of your Save Promise meetings? Does that include that circle up? Just to give kind of people a brief rundown of what that looks like in your schools. Drew, do you want to jump in? I know you have one coming up.
Yes, we do have one coming up. We actually haven't had an in-person meeting in like 2 years. So one thing that I'm excited about is we kind of have a chance to like shift how our meetings are run. In the past, we'd kind of gathered everyone together and then we just talked about what had to be talked about for the stand agenda. And then after being on the board for 2 years, I think including things like the Circle Up could be something really cool. Hopefully tomorrow's just an officer meeting to plan for the year since our school started just on Monday. But hopefully I can maybe test run something like a Circle Up and have us just talk about if we have any concerns or anything going on, and maybe have it as a test run for the year. So maybe I could include that as a 5-10 minute thing that we do before our meetings. And then after that, we just have a Google document that we use, and that's how we plan for the year. We write down all the ideas, and there will be someone that writes on the board in the back, someone will write on the computer, which will be projected. So we kind of make sure that lots of people's ideas are being shared, and then we make committees to work on the ideas.
Very efficient. Daithi, did you have something you wanted to add? I know there's a hand raised.
I had a little thing to add on the previous question, but I'm really excited to add. I'm going to add it anyways. My school, for the past 2 years, we've had a wellness center at our school. And I think that's been such a huge step for our school in like the direction for like taking care of student mental health. And they're doing such an incredible job with it this year. So first of all, basically what it is, it's just like a room where we have 2 wellness counselors, and their entire job is literally just like what Drew talked about, like finding those students under the radar. If a student isn't feeling like that well that day, they can like walk in. It's supposed to be a quiet space. If you want food, there's food there. There's like motivational posters. And it's just, and the second you walk in there will be someone who will say hi to you. It will either be a student or will be a counselor. And it's not even like that wasn't even planned. I think it's just like the environment that's been built in that room. And so like the second you walk in there, you'll be introduced to 3 students. You'll like a staff member will check in with you and say hi. And it's just such an incredible place because you know when you go there will be someone who will care. And so if you guys are able to get like the funding, or even just like a counselor or like a teacher who wanted to work part-time, I don't know, that's your thing. But it's Wellness Center, really, really amazing on-campus resource.
And it also gives that message of let's take care of ourselves, right? Let's not just run to sports or study for the test or focus on the academics or the music class or the show. So it really gives that message across the schools. Are there anything each of you have learned to do, if you don't mind sharing, if you don't want to, individually that you find really helpful during this time? And we've all kind of experienced sort of this really collective trauma of the pandemic, whether we've lost friends or family, we've lost safety and sense of what's going on in school, we've lost time, activities. So anything specific that you find really helpful?
For me, it's definitely like listening to someone else's story first, getting their perspective on things, their opinions on things, and like kind of like understanding 2 sides of the story. So yeah.
Kennedy's right. I think a lot of times, especially when we were in isolation, we kind of got in our own heads a lot. It was very easy to feel FOMO, fear of missing out. Like when people were going out and you couldn't go out because of COVID, and getting overwhelmed with school assignments and things like that. I think the way that I kind of dealt with that was, one, by getting as much like social interaction as I could. So like even now, because we're still a little bit limited on what we can do, just like encouraging students to do homework together or like group projects together. It just encourages them to get like just a little bit more interaction than they normally would. So I did a lot of homework assignments with my friends on Zoom or on FaceTime in the evenings, which is really helpful. Also, like changing the scenery a little bit is really helpful for students to like get engaged. So a lot of times, like in virtual schools, I did a lot of my homework outside. So I would go to the park and do homework in the park a lot. That was really helpful. But even just like changing up the classroom scenery at school, like doing class in a different kind of setting or like taking class outside if the weather allows it, can be really helpful for students' mental health. I think that's pretty much how I dealt with everything. But does anyone else have any ideas?
I agree with Lena, because today in math class, we played tic-tac-toe outside. I don't know what the purpose of that was related to math, but it was really fun. It was outside, so I agree with Lena.
I think also just really making sure that you take care of yourself and like the things that you need most. I know I've shared with this group many times that I had a really tough time last year. So just reminding yourself that it's okay to go to sleep when you haven't done everything that you thought you needed to do that day, getting enough food, getting up and moving, going outside, like just taking care of your basic needs, because that makes a big difference in everything else that you do.
Yeah, similar to what was already shared, I was going to talk about like going outside. That was something I really took advantage of during quarantine. And I'm thankful that I have the opportunity to like have a yard and go outside, because it really grounds me when I get like focused and I'm sitting at a computer for like 3 days consecutively. Going outside kind of like broadens my perspective. And thankfully our school also has a like open campus during lunch, so we can sit out on the field and like under the trees and the pavilion outside. So that's one thing that's both more COVID safe, and it's awesome because it lets us take advantage of outside. So I think that helps in the middle of a school day too.
Something else I just remembered that's been really helpful for like managing everything, especially as an upperclassman. I was a junior last year and I'm a senior this year. But something that my school has been doing to help students a little bit is focusing on this thing called social emotional learning. And one of the particular lessons that was really helpful within that curriculum was like goal setting and goal planning. So I feel like for us, it can be really overwhelming when, especially with like college applications coming up, or like if we're taking really rigorous classes like AP and honors classes, there can be a lot of like really overwhelming tasks on top of standardized testing, on top of like other projects that we have to work on. So there's a lot of these like large scale big goals that can get really overwhelming if you don't know how to manage it. So basically they taught us how you have this goal that you need to reach, and they kind of broke down the steps into planning that goal. So you kind of break it into micro tasks, and then you break it into even smaller micro tasks. So let's say if I have a test coming up and I need to work on a certain subject, we worked on like how I'm going to achieve getting an A on that test would be by breaking up the studying 3 times a week, doing studying with a group, trying different methods of practice and things like that. So that's like kind of just a general example, but like you can, I think it's really important just to teach kids how to like set a goal and how to like break down reaching that goal, because especially in virtual school, it was very like every day was the same, and it was hard to kind of like manage and like keep motivation. So I think teaching kids just to how to like stay focused and disciplined on like what they need to focus on in order to be successful can be really helpful to help them find motivation, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I saw everything. They find that really helpful, and really figuring out that time management skill as you go back to more rigorous things in the full time is a really big challenge. And I love all of your ideas about how to break it down, how to study. And then also, as Asha was talking about, how do we focus on ourselves? That sleep, food, seeing our friends, exercise, all those things are incredibly important. I will tell you, as a psychologist, if somebody walks in my office and they're really depressed, the first thing we do is get them activated. What are we doing? Where are we going? Right? That's like the number one thing. So to hear you guys internalizing that and taking it away, I think it's really important to send that message. I also know for a lot of you guys, school is very digital, right? Google Docs, Chrome, like all of that stuff. And I've seen firsthand that can be really challenging to organize yourself, to be going, checking each classroom. So some of these ideas about how to break it down is really helpful. We've kind of, I know we're a few minutes left. Anything else? I have some more questions that anyone want to touch upon on this topic from our panel? Awesome.
I know someone in the chat mentioned what schools are doing to reach the students that are kind of in the middle. One thing that I think isn't necessarily schools and like administration, but I think if students aren't particularly like things like extracurriculars, the one school related thing that they are always, no matter what, interacting with is teachers. And I think I have a lot of friends who aren't close with people like counselors, but they connect with 1 or 2 teachers really closely. So I think that teachers reaching out and making the connection with students that aren't like the above and all students just the average student in their classrooms. I think that goes a long way in helping people feel seen. And yeah, I have a lot of teachers that my friends really, really connect with because my school has awesome teachers. But I think personally, that's one of the best ways that school can help the in the middle students if they need.
I think going off what Drew said, for students who are in the middle, right? I was kind of a student in the middle. Like I was in like extremely well known, like in my grade, but I was in like people knew, like if they're like, oh, Maytha, I know Maytha. So I was in the middle. But for students in the middle, you know what I would recommend is you can take the initiative too. Like I was a student in the middle, but I applied for YAB so I can create that inclusive environment in my school. So if you're a student in the middle, don't hesitate to take the initiative and create a focus group in your school or create a circle up in your school, because you have the power to do anything you want. We're teenagers, so we have a voice. But yeah, that's my recommendation. Also get help, obviously, but don't be afraid to take the charge. Yeah.
I love that. Lena, go ahead.
I also think like another thing that teachers can do to help those students who are kind of in the middle is just fostering an environment in your classroom where like a lot of my teachers this week have started the class by like spending 5 or 10 minutes just talking or like asking every single person a question. So like we all went around and like said what we did this summer. We did one activity in one of my classes called a read, watch, listen, where we shared like what we read, what we watched, and what we listened to this summer. So just having like little exercises like that, where it's kind of like calling upon students to speak about themselves. I feel like a lot of those students that are in the middle, they're not going to like outright say what they want to say or like talk about themselves or like go make a new friend, but like they're just waiting for someone to ask them, or like our whole thing is start with hello. So like they're waiting for someone to come up to them and talk to them and have a conversation with them. So I think it's really important for teachers to like have an environment where kids are comfortable sharing about themselves, where they feel like you care and you want to know what's going on in their lives. I feel like that's really important for getting students to kind of share about themselves. And that way students can get to know their classmates a little bit better when maybe some students don't take it upon themselves to speak if they're not called on. So I don't know. I just really like that about returning to school is my teachers like really, really cared and asked us like what we're up to and how we're doing, I think.
This is going off of like honestly what Drew, Maytha, and Lena said. So this like is a very methodical idea, but I think this actually popped up in one of like our Save group chats. But apparently like in one school they had a thing where they like put up like every single student's like a little picture of them up on the wall, and then staff would go around and be like which student do I know? Now we have like a school of 2,500, so it's very different I think for our school, and we got to figure out a way to like apply the same method. But I feel like if you do have a small school, that might be a really interesting idea to pitch to staff.
I love that. I think a teacher on here is talking about how identified the connections. They went through each student and see kind of who knew them. I know that during COVID, a lot of students have been lost, right? They didn't show up for online classes and show up, so to be able to do the Zoom. So there's just going to be a lot of outreach, whether it's teachers, staff, and for you guys to kind of do that, to reach out to those students with that start with hello, find those students in the middle and take that opportunity. JJ, did you want to
add? Yeah, I actually had something to say. I saw what Erin had said in the chat, and basically what she said is that masks aren't being mandated in their school this year, and how the district lifted the mask mandate earlier last year. And so yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that, maybe bring up a conversation about that, because I know that is kind of a hot topic right now, like everywhere and kind of in the entire country and even probably the entire world. And so yeah, that's like it's like, yeah, because that's bullying and that's not okay. Just because someone has a different opinion or someone believes something different than you, then there's no reason that then anyone should be bullied that way. And so I think definitely, Erin, maybe bring it up to your principal if you can, or maybe bring it up to a teacher who might have the power to talk to the principal, or maybe set up a conference, because that's something that's not okay. And if it kind of goes unnoticed, then probably what can happen is that it can kind of spread. And so I think that maybe bringing it up to a teacher or someone, maybe an administrator, maybe you could maybe talk to them about maybe having an assembly, or kind of maybe showing a school-wide video about how it's not okay to bully or make fun of people who are wearing masks or people who are not wearing masks, because that can happen too. And so, and if you can't do that, maybe, and if they don't want to do a video, maybe asking if maybe there can be kind of more teachers around if they notice this, or maybe even administrators if they're around, if they notice this, then they can kind of root out the problem. And they might miss someone, but that can kind of help kind of stop it where it's going, because that's kind of an ongoing problem. If it's not kind of addressed right away, it can kind of spread throughout the school year, especially if if there's no mandate and that continues. And so I think maybe going to someone could probably help, like a trusted adult or something like that.
Right, that's a great idea, JJ, to take that bystander approach, as we say. Anyone else want to jump in on that? Hannity?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on what JJ said. First off, Erin, I'm so sorry that's happening. And for that, I think the first step is trying to educate students, just respecting each other's decisions and opinions. So maybe if your school could either make the video, or you could, sorry, there's a thunderstorm. Your school can either make the video or find it on YouTube and just share it. Let teachers share it with students and have a conversation after about what the video is and how it is, and post flyers. Because JJ said, if you don't stop it now, it's just gonna be a ball that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's better to stop it now than later.
I totally agree with that. And I think that this is a good time for you all who are having that issue to circle up. It's important to have everyone's opinions and whatever their views are be heard, so that everyone feels like they're respected. Because if you don't feel like you're safe at school to wear a mask or not wear a mask, then you're not going to have a good time at school and you're not going to learn. So that's an issue that needs to be resolved. So I think you all should have a conversation so you can understand each other better.
Yeah, sorry, I agree. I feel you, Erin, because my school is definitely one of the schools that does not require a mask. But at least there's never been any bullying in our school about masks, because everyone knows it's their own individual choice. What's funny is when you say this, I remember of see something, say something. Look for warning signs, take it seriously, act immediately. Don't let it get worse. That's all I'm saying. Just report it immediately to a trusted adult. So
yeah, I think it's great. And you all are such wonderful role models for the adults. So remind the adults at home too, right, to show that respect, so that carries through for the students that you're seeing at school, right? So I love these ideas. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just want to just ask kind of a broad question to all of you. Any last minute things you want to throw in? Anything that you think us adults are missing, right? What are we not seeing on the news? What are you and your friends talking about? What are any last minute thoughts about, what, this is the one thing I wish those grown-ups got? Yeah, Meta.
So I think one thing that's missing. So in the news, or you hear about, depression rates are spiking, mental health spiking, suicide among teenagers, right? And I think one big thing is, I'm gonna say this again, but it's social media. Definitely, and it's so hard because there's a huge generational gap between my parents and me. Here's the thing, I get it, because adults are trying their best. It's usually the adults are supposed to guide their kids through rough times, right? But technology has advanced so far that the parents can't catch up and ask their kids, how are you doing? How are you feeling when you're viewing Instagram? They don't know how to use it. So it's like this huge generational gap. And so I think when your kid comes to you saying, oh, I'm feeling anxious, or oh, I'm feeling depressed, do not shrug it off, because it's probably serious. Because social media can really warp your mind, and obviously with this huge generational gap, it doesn't make it easier. So And obviously it's going to take so much time for adults to catch up to social media because it's constantly evolving. So just don't listen to what your kid has to say, because you don't want it to get to that extent where it ends up in depression or suicide. That's what I say.
I think that's a really great point. Anyone else have anything they want to ask?
Yeah, I just want to add that I think it's important to create a space of inclusivity where people can feel more open, especially in schools, whether that's like virtually or in person. And I think that's one thing that like I've been trying to work on, is to like reach out to others and let them know that they feel open. And I think it's important even for like adults to do that as well, with like whether like teachers to students, parents to children, and just let them know that they're a trusted adult and that they're there for them.
That's wonderful. Kennedy?
Okay, so this might not go for everyone, but at least like for me, like sometimes we're not as confident or pitch perfect as you would think. So like if a student who's always like that bubbly, that smiley, like you think, oh, like she or he got life perfect. Sometimes you don't know what's going on in that, like, their personal life. So that time that you do see them with like, just like in a normal mood, not normal, but like a calm mood, or like a little bit sad, like, go up, because, there's something serious that might, could be happening. So.
I wanted to say, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say something similar, is sometimes we're not great at expressing how we feel. I know when I was going through depression, like my emotions came out in different ways. I would get angry and I would get snappy when I wasn't actually angry with the person who I was speaking to. So just try to have a little patience. And just because we're not saying what we're feeling at that moment doesn't mean we're not feeling it. So that grace would be really appreciated.
I love that. I think that's a great point. I think often people think depression looks like on TV, not getting out of bed, not eating, and it's actually not true at all. It often looks like someone really functioning, going about their day. And for adolescents, a lot of the time it's irritability. That's exactly how it comes out. So I think that's a really good point. And as Joelle said, kind of having adults be open and be there for you and kind of be willing to have those conversations. JJ, did you want to say something? I saw your camera kind of go off.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Joel said about how inclusivity and how coming into the new school year, that's something that I think is really big to focus on, because not everyone's been here, and then kind of we don't all have the same friend groups at school. And so maybe kind of reaching out to a person who seems lonely at lunch, who seems lonely at school, because I know just today I can reach out to people, and I know some of my friends are shyer, so they won't reach out to people as much as I would. And so it's just kind of being able to just say, hey, your earrings look cool, what's your name? And just being able to just kind of find a connection, maybe compliment someone, because that's really an awesome way to kind of start the conversation off, is just kind of complimenting something they have on and then asking their name, because that can kind of start a connection, and just realizing that everyone's not the same as you. And so you kind of have to find an approach that'll make them feel comfortable, because, even with social media, people kind of have their own groups on social media, and maybe on like Snapchat, where they're talking to the same people every day, and, they try and talk to someone else, and that person might not know what you're talking about, solely because you two aren't in the same friend group. Because, for me, I don't have any social media. And so sometimes when they're talking about things, I do kind of feel left out, because I have no idea what they're talking about. Like, oh, have you seen the new TikTok trend? I have not seen the new TikTok trend. So I hate to break it to you, but, kind of just making sure that everyone feels included, and everyone feels like they have a place in the school, because I think that that's really important to kind of making everyone feel welcome. And yeah.
I mean, I totally agree, because I didn't have social media until recently. I definitely know what JJ is going through. You could definitely feel left out when TikTok is the big thing right now. I definitely agree. And what I would recommend to people who are feeling that is, honestly, just there has to be one person out there who's like the oddball out. Go try to find that person, or just do what you're interested in, because you made the choice not to have social media. So you do what interests you. Don't feel pressured, because peer pressure is definitely not, it can be good, but it also can be bad. So just do whatever you feel
I love, and I think Drew put this in the chat, just this idea that you guys are all talking about, just check in with your friends, have real conversations. Don't just stick to always a surface stuff, but when you say, how are you? Be like, how are you, right? Like, what's going on? I love that. I think you guys really represent that really well. We are kind of a few minutes over, but Dayuthi, I saw your kind of mute button go on and off, so please, I want to give you a chance.
If we need to leave, like, I'm good.
Go for it. No.
But a last thing I'd want to add is that, like, something that I think Hallie brought up is it takes courage to do this type of thing. I think it's very easy to be like, oh, go ask a trusted adult. Like, just tell them. Like, that takes a lot of courage, and it's not always that easy. And so, first of all, if you like the fact that you're even asking these types of questions means that you care. So, like, kudos to that. And also, it's like high school is scary, and you're always comparing yourself to each other, and I think just really going off like what Maida and Ashi said, like, you aren't going to regret it 3 years later. Like, do what you want to do, make the changes you want to make. Some people are going to laugh at you, and it will eventually be okay. And you are going to really love the person that you become. So you're doing amazing.
I love that. And just recognizing your own strengths and weaknesses, right? So I think Madeline posted on here, she's good at talking to people. Some people are better at having those quiet conversations. So ask for help when you need it, and seek out your friends for the parts that you love, and kind of focus on everyone's strengths and weaknesses. We're all kind of holistic people, right? So I really want to thank all of you for being on this panel tonight, taking the time out of your schedule, starting school. For some of you, it's late, and you probably maybe have homework already. I don't know. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate everyone who came to listen. Again, this is recorded. We will send it out for those who missed some of it. We could probably talk to y'all all night long. So, and hopefully we could do another one of these. I think it was awesome. Just some events coming up. Sign up for Start with Hello Week. It's any week between September 7th to October 1st. And Sandy Promises National Start with Hello Week is September 20th through the 24th. We'll throw the registrations up in the chat. I believe they're also on our website. And we have a Start with Hello Pep Rally on Tuesday, September 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. Also super fun. So again, thank you all for being here, and keep reaching out, keep connecting with us, whether it's on social media or email. We love to hear from everybody, and we appreciate it all. So thank you guys.